Now it's my pleasure to introduce our presenter today, Stephan Liozu. Stephan is Chief Value Officer of Thales Group. He is also an adjunct professor and research fellow at Case Western Reserve University Weatherhead School of Management. He is a certified pricing professional, a Prosci-certified change manager, and a strategizer business model innovation coach. He has also written several articles on strategic pricing issues for the Journal of Professional Pricing and is a regular presenter at Professional Pricing Society conferences, as well as the Strategic Account Management Association conferences. He has authored 4 books: Value Mindset, Dollarizing Differentiation Value, The Pricing Journey, and Pricing for Human Capital. He has also co-edited 3 books: Innovation in Pricing, Contemporary Theories and Best Practices, The ROI of Pricing, and Pricing in the Sales Force. So with that, Stephan, welcome.
Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon. Pleased to be here with you. So when the Leverage Point asked me for one of these, up and emerging topic for a webinar, which I always enjoy doing, really right now, I think one of them is around the extraction of value in digital. And you look out there in the world and you ask yourself, companies are investing billions and billions in digital, and over 80% of companies have digital transformations. They're, putting sensor everywhere, but you're asking yourself, who is actually making money and delivering EBIT based on their digital offers? And so as I embark in a research project with a colleague of mine, Professor Ulaga, for the past 18 months, researching the topic of data monetization, having lots of interviews and with professionals from the best of the best out there in digital transformation, and really started to put a cohesive approach to data monetization, which is still remaining one of the very difficult things to do. So, as you know, monetization means extracting a revenue stream or profit stream from an asset. In that case, we're talking about data being the asset, and whether data is the heart of the offer or whether data is the enabler of your hardware or your software, then you have to look at monetization in a different way. But we'll also talk about dollarization. So you have to be able to monetize and create opportunities for clients, but you also have to be doing that better than competition. And that's why we're going to get into how do you value model, your digital differentiation. So that's a whole background about this topic. And I know it's a niche topic, but lots of companies are, struggling with this. And as you can imagine, we cannot do cost plus pricing on our data-based offerings. So, so in our research, we saw a lot of different issues that are not untypical issues in the traditional business already, in the core business, but they are resounding and they are compelling when you look at data-driven models. And number one is really you see a lot of misalignment between what the business are doing in their business strategies and then their digital strategies. So how do you fit the digital strategy as part of the business strategy? Is the business strategy more digital? What are you, is that a strategic priority? Is that a divisional approach? So lots of companies are struggling with this. How do you embed digital into their business? And obviously, there's different ways of doing that. And I often say that the way you design your digital, I would say opportunities, but also your structure is really going to impact the way you go to market and the way you execute on your digital strategy. So whether you have an external incubator, an internal incubator, whether you have a dedicated division or not, that is going to potentially make or break your go-to-market. Number 2 issue is the fact that with digital and with everything around data, you can't use business as usual approaches. And you can't go, and obviously I live that every day in my role in Thales because it's highly complex. So you have to look at applying some breakthrough thinking in your innovation, your segmentation process, your marketing strategy, your analysis of an ecosystem, and you really can look at just the way I did this before and then applying the same techniques. And we'll talk about, for example, customer intimacy and the fact that in digital, you need much more customer intimacy because there's going to be a lot of different actors, a lot of different impact on the process, which may not be the case in the core business. So lots of companies make that mistake. They'll use their traditional stage gate process or innovation process or segmentation for their digital and data-driven opportunities, which ends up being then at the end a plain vanilla type of offer. So and I say that every day. We can't just be happy with what we have today. We have to challenge ourselves and do. If we want to be disruptive in data-driven models, we have to be disruptive in the way we think and the tools we use. Number 3 is classic technology push. Lots of companies think they put sensors in their products and they become digital champions, and we have a digital transformation. It's technology push is nice, but then at the end of the day, how do you sell it? It's nice that you have sensor and collecting data. What do you do with it? And by the way, no one is going to pay a premium because there is a sensor in your product. So, how do you extract the value of your connected products? And that's so it really requires, back to number 2, a user need value proposition design process where you're going to have to go deep into the customer pains and gains, and you're going to have to find the little nuggets that will make a key difference in the customer life on a daily basis. Number 4, you will have in digital, in data-driven opportunities to go out and do a lot more testing, prototyping, validating, and you're going to have to test that differentiation level. And then you're going to have to quantify your differentiation versus other players in the digital space. And that is typically not done well. To the point where I've talked to companies who are the best of the best in marketing, and they're struggling doing that in the digital world, and also they do this without the right experts. So, for example, when we go into testing your pricing models or designing willingness to pay research, they won't do it, or they'll do it without the pricing people being involved, which is, was a bit of interesting findings when I interviewed all these companies. So, number 5 is the selection of convenient accounts. So, yes, you may have a good digital opportunity, an MVP, minimum viable product, or you may have a great offer around your data. But then how do you go and pilot this with the customer? So you would ask your salespeople, your business development people, hey, who should we go and ask for a pilot with? And the traditional response will be, well, I know that guy, I know this customer very well. Let's go in. Now, I propose here that you have to have a process to select your customer pilots, and this process must be much more rigorous than in the traditional business. And you can't go and select account based on convenience or access. You have to select account based on their maturity in data, their established infrastructure, the type of champions they have leading their digital transformation, how much access they have to the ecosystem. So it requires a different view on the customer process, on the customer selection. And then last but not least, even if you do everything well, on the value side, going out to the market with a traditional cost plus transactional pricing model for a digital offer is really going to leave either a lot of money on the table or end up in a freemium, something premium, or something that no one can sell. So you do need to do innovation in pricing. And I know I wrote a book on the topic, and it's difficult to do, but you have to look at adapting your pricing model away from pure legacy pricing model into new, maybe hybrid pricing models that are going to be very difficult to transition. So you see why this is not business as usual. And this is why, it's irrational to think that now I put 5 sensors in my product and I'm going to have data, right, on my product. And, I'm going to start charging a premium for these without looking at what does that mean for the customer? What does that mean for us? How do we position that in our product lines? How do we go to market? So nothing new really in essence, because as we talk about disruptive innovation in the past for the last 100 years, when we invented the light bulb, we invented the automotive, and they had to do the same thinking. But here, for some reason, in the digital world, many B2B companies are rushing to the market with half-baked opportunities. And at the end of the day, it doesn't work. Or the customers don't pay a premium. They don't want to pay for the data, or they don't want to pay for the connectivity, or they don't care. So, how do you fix this? And the first step is I usually recommend to really apply canvases. So there are a lot of canvases out there, and the most known, I would say, around digital are the Lean Startup Canvas by Eric Ries. And this is the ones that it has gone viral, and it's being used by lots of incubators because we're creating what's called the MVP, the minimal viable product, and we're going from idea to MVP to launchable opportunity to launch in the core business. Another one is the one that I have on the screen here, which is the Strategizer business model canvas, which is also a good way to show how your idea, how your digital opportunity is going to market. On the right side, you have the go-to-market. On the left side, you have how you're going to organize and resource your delivery. Now, I encourage you to read about these canvases, the Lean Startup and the Strategizer, the business model generation canvas, because those are good canvas to have good discussions with your project teams. A lot of the time in an incubator, things are moving very fast. Lots of different people are working in different directions, but at the end, these canvas really, create alignment, and they create a collaboration platform where hopefully at the high level we have a storyline, we have the wow business model, the wow value proposition, and then we organize around the two critical boxes of these canvas, which is the customer segmentation and the value proposition. These are the ones that typically are driving the business model. And obviously, you want to be well organized. You have to have a great resources, an acceptable cost structure. Now, also, these canvases force you, especially in the data area, to look at key partnerships. So if you want to integrate data or content for your users or for your customers, and you may have to go and acquire that content or do partnerships with other companies, then you're going to put them in the key partnership area. Now, key partnerships are typically in the traditional core business of manufacturing and heavy services. You would have, joint ventures, partnerships around delivery. Here, we have to look a lot more in open innovation, because in the data area, in the digital space, lots of companies and lots of vendors are existing out there. And you look at these massive ecosystems of all these players, at some point, you can't invent everything yourself. So you have to go look at your cloud infrastructure, you're going to have to look at your data software, and you're going to have to look at, make a decision, say, well, which one do I pick? And sometimes the ones that you pick in the partnership box right here makes a big difference in your differentiation level. So whether you decide to go with Amazon or go with Azure or go with Predix or go with Bluemix from IBM, that would bring different levels of performance. So really you have to look at this canvas also in a way that is going to be my kind of high level view of partnerships and open innovation to accelerate the deployment of my digital opportunity. Right. So, and that's typically something that's not well understood in B2B. The marketers and business developers and technologists go in with a traditional view of partnerships, and that has to change. So, recommendation here is to use canvases. They exist. They're great. They provide alignment and a collaboration platform, and then they really test. Around that you could create your testing plan, your validation plan, and obviously the bottom right is your revenue streams, where you're going to have lots of input on, pricing. So you guys know me. Lots of you already attended several of the webcasts or several of the webinars. But I typically say a pricing model comes last, and it's the result of a great business model. So And I cannot stress that enough in the data world. You have to look at your value creation model, how you're going to get paid or make money from your data and your digital, opportunity. And that is going to drive the rest of the chain. So, and if your business model is wrong or your value creation model is not appropriate, then your pricing model, chances are, will not be, appropriate as well. So, the sequence is critical. You do your business model, then you extract your value proposition for your data. Then you're going to look at, okay, how do we do this? How are we going to do it better than competition? And we'll talk about competition in a couple slides away. Then you're going to dollarize that. And then later, based on that dollarization analysis, which is the EVE, the value modeling, you're going to decide how you price. And not only the price point, the price structure, but also the pricing model and the profit formula. Can you cover your cost? Can I make margin? But don't forget about that sequence. It's very important. You don't start on data and digital offers by saying, I'm going to do a subscription pricing model. Well, where is that coming from? Well, it has to be as part of the business model, right? And it's got to be aligned with a strong value proposition. So we go on the chain on the left, from business model to value prop to dollarized value model to pricing model, but on the right, from value creation to value quantification and to value capture. It's not the first time you hear me say that, but I'm a true believer, and as a chief value officer in the Thales Group, this is what I'm focusing on, to make sure that the teams working on digital offers and the MVPs are working on these deliverables and not jumping, some of the steps. So then what does that mean? Then in the data monetization sequence, you have the value creation model, right? And that's your business model and your value proposition. You have your dollarized value model, which, hopefully comes out of a leverage point with customer value model. And at the end, we want to look at the value pool. What exactly is the total incremental value versus competition? And at the end, the pricing model comes out, which could be a totally innovative pricing model, outcome-based, pay-per-use, subscription-based, freemium plus something else, or a hybrid. I sell a product with a margin, and then I sell data, or I sell a subscription, or I sell a license for software. So I mentioned that before. I think if you ask me, what is the number one key success factor to get your go-to-market strategy right on the digital environment, digital world, and I think I will say that it's customer intimacy. You have no choice but to go deeper to understand your customers. And that means redoing some of the things you may have done in your traditional core business, because it's not the same. It's not the same type of relationships. It's not the same types of environment. Your ecosystem is going to change, and you're talking to potentially different people at the customer location. So I propose these 8, that's a lot of things, but number one is you have to revisit your segmentation, make sure that either the one that you have is good, or you have to add a digital component or digital dimension in your segmentation. And for example, you may have to add data maturity, you may have to have data readiness in some of the classification criteria of your segmentation. Then obviously I talked about, once you've done that, who is going to be first in the pilot? And how do you know they're ready? So you're going to have to go through a deep understanding of, your customers to select the right one, and then come up with a portfolio of pilots that will be at different levels of maturity, of data maturity, and also different attractiveness level of your offer. So one could be IoT, one could be predictive maintenance, another one could be cloudification, you name it. More importantly, you have to map the strategic account footprint. So understand that if you work with a customer of yours, how many plants do they have, how many assets, how many machines? So we get into the account-based marketing here a little bit more, and understand their strategy. Are they doing the digital transformation or not? So having the same vocabulary and getting to know what they're trying to do to achieve. Are we trying to save money? Are we trying to increase revenue? Do they want to have prestige or not? So number 4 is remapping your buying center, and it's essential. Now, when you get into your buying center for traditional business, you will see, your procurement, your end user, your CFO, your maintenance managers, and et cetera, et cetera. When you go into a data, environment, you have to pay attention to other people. For example, the IT group is going to be a stakeholder. The electrical maintenance group is going to be a key player because you're going to put boxes and wires in someone's process, and it's got to be plugged in the central electrical system. Facilities will also be important because you may have to have access to all the assets and the plant and the rooms. So someone needs to open the doors. So it changes the way you're going to have to look at your buying center and who plays a role. And you'll be surprised, sometimes we think we're going to have quick access because we know the customer. But if you've traditionally talked to 3 or 4 stakeholders in a customer location, and now you need to talk to 2 or 3 more, chances are you don't know them. You never talk to the facility manager or the maintenance of electrical. So you're going to have to find them, establish a relationship, ask for an introduction, and that takes time. And then you have to build an internal winning coalition around procurement to make sure that you win these people over to go around procurement in procurement at that stage, especially for mature companies are going to talk to other suppliers of digital offers. The last 3 are going to be more traditional, understanding value in use, understanding the customer KPIs, the financial, KPIs, the operational process, the pains, the gains, and all that good stuff. So this is why it's not business as usual, right? So one of the myths in digital and in the data world is, and I see that in, listening to a lot of the companies we researched and we studied with Professor Ulaga, is, some companies already don't have a lot of customer intimacy in their core business, and they think they can do in their digital business much better with that level of intimacy. What chances are, if your level of intimacy is not good in your core business, it's not going to be good in your digital business. And that is a problem. And in the digital world, you have to use much more customer insight technique than in the traditional business because there's less intuition. In the traditional business, people have 20 years, 30 years, 15 years of experience, so they're more intuitive and they have a lot more informal knowledge about the customer. In the digital world, it's a whole different ballgame. It's a whole different environment. We're talking about data, intangible things. So that means customer insights, that means customer research, that means customer pilots, and not business as usual, thinking that I know the customer. Now, I hope you're noting by now that yes, indeed. So the second critical dimension of monetization of data is knowing your competitors. And there also there is going to be a lot of heavy discussion with the teams. I propose there are 4 situations, right? If you're today a provider of, or you want to become a provider of digital and data-driven MVPs or products or solutions, you're going to have to look at your direct competitors, right? So Siemens, Honeywell, big distributors that are also assembling. Avnet, for example, is an example, a big electronics distributor. You have suppliers, Cisco and HPE, that are also involved, and Intel that are involved in digital offerings. And then you got lots of startups that are doing faster and better things than you're doing as a manufacturer. So this is the direct ones. So you're a manufacturer, you want to offer IoT to your customers, but you're competing against your direct competitors who also want to do that, right? So Bosch is doing, is a manufacturer, but also an indirect competitor because they sell services. So the number 2 is indirect competitors. Indirect competitors are the big consulting companies, BCG Digital, Deloitte Digital, McKinsey Digital, offering fast and furious 90-day turnkey digital offers to your customers. So chances are, if you're competing against these companies, they already have a much more established presence in the segment of very matured companies, right? So you can't forget them. There is also the digital factories of large manufacturers that have gone outside and turned that into they have productized, like Bosch Digital. They use that internally, but they sell services and software to the world. So they become a competitor of what you're trying to do. And then you have the GAFAM, Google, Apple, Facebook, Amazon, and Microsoft, offering digital solutions. Sometimes on certain aspects of the data value chain, other times full solutions. So you may, think, well, I only compete against a Siemens, for example, or against a Avnet. But chances are, if you have a big customer of yours wanting to do digital work and they're very mature in digital, they're either talking to your competitors direct, but BCG and Deloitte are in there because these companies are prospecting heavily. So you may face different types of competitors. Number three is the customer internal solutions. A customer always has the option of make or buy. They could buy from you a turnkey solution, or they could do it internally with their internal digital factories or internal consulting groups. Last but not least, there is obviously nothing is done, or the do nothing. The customers have not started yet and they need help from you with hardware, with software, with integration, with data management. So those are four different situations and in essence, four different reference values. So if you do value models today, then you're going to have to look at, which one is my reference value. Now, in all, in the last 2 years, I collected about 250 to 280 reports and consulting reports and studies on digital, opportunities, the digital transformation, Industry 4.0, IoT, predictive maintenance, you name it. Most of these reports are focusing on point number 4. We all talk about digital as if customers did nothing. And then we show the 2% improvement of yield, the 15% reduction in operational expense, the 28%, improvement, optimization of inventory cost. That's great. But most customers are already working in digital. So the do nothing is less and less of a situation. More and more is going to be 3, 2, and 1. And that changes the value model, right? Because when you do nothing, there's potentially a lot of opportunity to save money for the customer. But the customer might be doing a pilot already with BCG Digital or Cisco. Then they already have an offer. They already have a reference value in mind. So how do we compete against the reference value is different than versus the do nothing. Another point is, do we know the capability enough of these competitors? Do you know the Honeywell digital solutions? Do you know the Boeing digital solutions? Well, who's doing the competitive analysis of this before we go and explore dollarization and value modeling? So this slide you've seen before is going to be in the book that hopefully you can win today in the raffle, but you have to really extract your true differentiators versus these competitors. And the differentiators are going to be different when I look at these 4 situations. They're going to be totally different, based on the situation. So is it valuable to the customer? Do they really care about the differentiator? Is it rare or everybody offers it? Is it costly to imitate? Are there technical and marketing switching costs? And then are you well organized to deploy it? So for example, if you look at Deloitte Digital today, and they're making a lot of noise in social media around their 90-day IoT turnkey solution. That's what they offer. They even put a value calculator on their website. It's interesting. How do you compete against these people? 90-day turnkey solution. Wow. Now imagine in an industrial group, 90 days is just to get started. 90 days, you have 2 meetings. Now Deloitte goes in 90 days and deploys it. So for them, they'll put that as a critical differentiator because they organize for exploitation. They're going to get it done, in other words. So go back to this and you'll see that, for example, if I compete against another digital factory, you're going to have to find the critical differentiator for my digital factory versus someone else's digital factory. Where is the differentiation coming from? Well, better algorithm, better predictive models, better access to data, better integration of the data, faster speed of delivery. So there's a lot of different differentiators versus the do nothing. So I prepare with the support from Leverage Point 2 traditional value models that you've seen before if you attend the Leverage Point webinar. But typically this is a do nothing situation, so there's no reference value. And typically you have your traditional differentiator versus the do nothing. I'm going to reduce your downtime. I'm going to reduce your maintenance cost, increase your productivity, and there's a lot of value. And that could be per plant per year but the do nothing is the ideal situation because these drivers are already documented. Everybody's talking about maintenance cost reduction. So that's easier to do. And for you, if the customer has not started yet, you have an opportunity to get embedded and to create switching costs. Now, this is another situation where you have a turnkey predictive maintenance value model against XYZ Digital. In that case, XYZ Digital is going to charge a customer of yours $150,000 to do a turnkey predictive maintenance solution. Now, what are you going to do better than them? And that's your differentiator. I have better operational excellence, so I'm going to deliver it better to the customer. I can do that worldwide. So for a customer of mine that's going to be needing global deployment of predictive maintenance, then I can do that better than XYZ Digital. I have deeper knowledge of the customer process versus XYZ Digital. That's $20,000 in additional value, but I may have to do advanced training. So I'm going to cost $5,000 more in training. So here there's also a lot of value. But you can see now I need to know XYZ Digital. I need to understand what they do. I need to understand how they're going to price their turnkey solution. And as you know, in differentiation analysis and dollarization, you have to know your competitor's reference value price. And it's tough to find. So two examples of two situations that I mentioned before. So one is against do nothing, which is simpler, I would say. You know the customer process, you're going to look at 2 or 3 value drivers, and you're going to dollarize that and show the incremental value of your digital offer versus the do nothing. And then this one where you're going to have different value drivers, and you're going to have, you're going to have a serious competitor here offering turnkey solution. So 2 examples of value models, and those were done in Leverage Point because we're using Leverage Point today in Thales, and we're deploying, in lots of divisions, and it's working phenomenally. So what do you do with this then? 2 situations. One is you have a business model and a value proposition that's disruptive, differentiating, very solution-oriented, with a high value pool, and the customer is willing to pay for the differentiation. In that case, we're talking about disruptive in innovation. So your digital offers is very disruptive and very, high value creating. In that situation, you can think about introducing a new pricing metric. You can think about an innovation value model because there is so much value to share that you have an incentive to give to the customer. But at the bottom, if your business model and value prop is incremental, quickly imitable, you have a lot of different players out there. It's mostly product oriented or data around the product, low value pool and very traditional. The sector is very traditional. It's going to be very difficult in that case to introduce a new pricing model. You're going to have to maybe use an existing pricing metric, a traditional profit formula, and maybe a hybrid. So this is important. So how you're going to select this is based on the level of differentiation and disruptiveness, but also the quantity in the value pool. If you're talking 10 million euros or dollars of value pool versus 500,000 euros, then you're going to share differently. So keep that in mind, and it's going to be depending on obviously your industry, your opportunities, and the number of customers in the scope of opportunity. The key here is to have a perfect match between value metric and pricing metric, and that's essential. And it's already the case in the traditional core business. But if the customer is thinking about per click or per ton or per aircraft, per flying hours, you can't give them a price per 10 years. And so you're going to have to align that internally very quickly and make sure you design a pricing metric that matches the customer vocabulary and what they're thinking in terms of. And then looking at what's important in pricing model. In that slide, it's a little bit of a heavy slide. You're going to have your pricing model structure and the nature of your pricing metric. These are, are you going to put data in the product? Are you going to sell data on top of the product through services? Are you going to create a brand new business model around subscription, pay-per-use, or performance-based pricing? Or you're thinking about hybrid because of the, the nature of your industry, right? So based on this, how are you going to go to market? Your value creation model, you're going to looking at the pricing metric and how you're going to, the pricing strategy. And your pricing metric is going to have to be customer-centric, credible, compelling, and very specific to the segment. Remember, this assumes you've done a segmentation of your customer based on digital needs. The outcome of this is different pricing models. So you could look at outcome-based pricing, pay per performance, risk sharing, and and maybe investing capital with the customer into a joint venture. So we split the outcome. Or usage-based pricing, pay per use, right? Traditional pay usage, per period, per interaction. Or a subscription-based model, which is not here, but there's pretty much three types of choices here. The key here is not to do cost plus pricing, and to price your digital opportunity, your data opportunities based on cost plus, because you look at the speed of obsolescence and the commoditization of equipment in IT, it's going super fast on the way down. So if you do this, your buyers are going to know that a cable or a TV or a server price is going down every year by 10% in price. So they're going to assume that your cost plus pricing is going to be minus 10% every year. And that's deadly. So keep that in mind. First, you look at your value creation model and what are you going to price, the data on top of the product or new model or hybrid model. Then you're going to decide on one or two or three choices of a pricing model. The most difficult aspect of pricing and monetizing data is to integrate transactional pricing model, which you're doing today in your core business, with new digital pricing models. And the integration of the two will be integrated digital pricing models. So you may have different pricing metrics for different customer segments. You may have different pricing model with hybrid or innovative, depending on the segments. So multiple value metrics. You're going to have to put that in your IT system to make sure that it's acceptable in your ERP and your price optimization if you're using software. And then you're going to have to track for results. But the difficulty, again, is managing the integration, managing the complexity of multiple pricing models, multiple segments into the existing IT infrastructure and your pricing strategy. Who's going to do this once it goes live and you're scaling? Maybe, for example, you have a segment where you're going to sell software, another segment you're selling a box plus a subscription, and then a third segment where you're doing outcome-based pricing based on performance. How do you manage that in your ERP and your pricing strategy? Believe me, from what I hear from the digital champions, it's super complicated. So examples of pay-per-use, the traditional pay-per-use, usage-based pricing, you've seen those before, you've read about those before, nothing new there, but I wanted to give you some example that you can study in your. So we're moving away from a price for an equipment to a price per another unit of measure. Okay, so this, and I know I gave you a lot of information, as always, value first, then price. So as you can see in data monetization, there's lots of different considerations, from segmentation to reanalyzing your competition, finding out about these new competitors that are popping up. And right now it's moving fast track. So a lot of new entrants promising the moon to your customers, but at the end of the day, they're doing that, and you have to make sure that you compete. Then you got to look at, okay, what are my four situations? I have to dollarize a different way, different reference value, different value drivers, extract the true differentiation, dollarize it, and then obviously go based on the value pool, the level of disruption, the innovativeness of your data offer. What kind of pricing model do I do? And then executing. But you see there's a sequence. And I'm preparing with Professor Ulaga, we're preparing a data monetization roadmap with 8 steps to help professionals do this better. So stay tuned for my further writing and Professor Ulaga's further writing. In the meantime, I hope we can stay connected. Connect with me on LinkedIn, and I hope we can ask a lot of questions today. So thank you for attending, and that concludes my presentation.
Great, thanks, Stephan. So we've had a couple questions come in so far during the webinar, but there is still time to enter your question into the panel on your screen. While you're entering, a reminder to complete that 10-second survey while exiting today's webinar to be entered into a raffle for 5 free copies of Dollarizing Differentiation Value. Now to give you a couple more minutes to enter your question, just a few words on leverage point. Forrester Research states the first vendor to succeed in communicating a vision to value to executives wins the business 74% of the time. So how can you guarantee that you'll be that vendor? Well, your sales team needs to bring their approach into the 21st century, meaning it must be value focused, customer centric, and of course, digital. The traditional sales approach was created to educate a buyer, but today's buyers are more educated than ever, spending more than 60% of their buying process researching online before even talking to a sales rep. Do away with the standard corporate overview, long PowerPoint presentation, extensive questioning, and features and benefits review. Instead, create a crisp digital presentation that highlights what you're actually going to deliver to that customer, qualitatively, quantitatively, and financially. Present data that can be revised so the prospect can visualize financial results, and leave behind a unique presentation that is tailored to them. Sounds great, right? But where do you start? Well, that answers case studies. Old school sales and marketing reps have generated a bunch of content that our buyers want to read, but it's static and it frequently gets lost in the shuffle. Case studies are a prime example. They very clearly give you a crisp background and challenge, then get straight into solutions and financial results. Buyers download them from your site, they ask for them on a sales call, and they make buying decisions based off the financial results that are displayed in case studies. So why are salespeople only using them as a leave behind? Why are we leaving behind something that gets to the point fast and proves your value and convinces a buyer to buy? Well, maybe it's because they aren't digital, but now they can be. Embedding this information into your sales presentation is the only way to be the first vendor to communicate a vision to value. And remember, according to Forrester, that vendor wins the business 74% of the time. So I took some screenshots from our interactive sales presentation tool to give you a quick example. This is a digital presentation. Everything you see here can be customized live for the prospect. This is a fictional example where we embedded an existing static case study into the presentation. To start, we frame the customer's challenge. After proving industry insights, we jump into the solutions that were provided to a similar customer within that case study: business productivity improvements, risk mitigation, IT infrastructure cost savings, and IT staff productivity benefits. We then get straight into the financial results, quantifying the value that was delivered from each solution. Again, all of this is customizable. Although the information came from a case study for a customer similar to the prospect on the line, you may find that the prospect wants to change a few numbers to better match their company. With a digital presentation, all of that is doable, then and there, recalculating the total value delivered and creating a presentation completely unique to the prospect on the line. If you found any of that interesting, we'd love to have you enter our monthly webinar raffle where we're giving away a digital case study. So you can send us one of your case studies and we'll digitally transform it for you free of charge. So just check the corresponding box in the exit survey upon leaving today's webinar, or email us at casesstudies@leveragepoint.com. All right, Stephan, let's see, we got a few questions. And to answer the most popular one myself, yes, the webinar is recorded and the slides and recording will be emailed to you within 2 business days. So Stephan, here's the first one for you. What do you see in digital? What's the most commonly used pricing model?
Okay, so I would say the subscription-based pricing is, is very popular because of the SaaS opportunities, and in software, lots of companies are moved to SaaS, software as a service. So, and that created a wave of a lot of subscription, type of businesses. Now, in the industrial sectors, B2B goods, we're still at the traditional transaction-based pricing with a premium, and lots of companies are, add the data-based services into the premium, or as an additional add-on that's sold separately. So, and the transition is really based on the maturity. You would go from product, the box pricing to maybe a subscription to a pay-per-use. The one that is really not done much is outcome-based pricing, performance-based pricing, because the risk management aspect consideration here is huge, and it takes a while, and you need to have a deep customer maturity. So I would say probably the product box pricing and subscription, are the most used, and then we see a lot more pay-per-use also. It's emerging.
Great. Okay, so obviously a lot of traditional companies are using cost plus or competitive based pricing. How do you How do you convince those traditional companies to move away from those pricing approaches?
Well, I think you have to create a little bit of fear, and as I mentioned before, lots of people have published things on IoT, and if you've researched McKinsey, for example, they publish reports on Industry 4.0, and they show the dramatic drop in cost of equipment in IoT and predictive maintenance. So the cost of a sensor is dropping like 20% a year. I mean, it's like it costs now a fraction of what it used to cost, just 5 years ago. So, and it's the same for all kinds of different accessories and servers, and even the cost of warehousing data. You look at the cost of gigabytes of storage is nothing now. So at the end of the day, you have to show that dramatic case internally and tell them we cannot continue doing cost plus, because look at this trend. And you have to show that the curves going down, and the trends going down, and the fact that buyers are quickly able to debundle your data solution. They'll know the cost of a server, they'll know the cost of cables, they'll know the cost of screens, and they'll tell you, I can only pay X for your box, and the data should come free. So you really have to quickly move the discussion to value, and the value becomes the customer benefits and the savings very quickly. So this is urgent. This is like the burning platform, is to move away from cost discussion. The problem is, if internally in your company everything is is based on cost, it's a real challenge. It's a real challenge, and I'm predicting that companies that do cost plus pricing will end up giving everything away for free, because at the end, they're going to charge for the product, the box, the equipment, and it's just no choice but giving data or software with the product, back to the traditional pricing models, I would say. So you have to create a strong sense of urgency and burning platform as part of your digital incubator, your digital transformation, that cost and competition cannot be accepted as a pricing orientation.
Yeah, totally agree. Okay, and this looks like it's our last question, unless anybody wants to add in any more. But let's say you convinced that pricing organization to move away from cost plus competitive base. What's your next step? Where do you start? How do you get the organizational change?
Well, you have to apply the methodology of value-based pricing. But for digital, which is a bit adapted, I would say, based on what I started saying in this webinar, and a lot more is going to be published on the topic. But understanding your customers, go deep. Now the problem is, everything moves fast in digital, and in these digital incubators, they have a sense of urgency, because companies are investing millions and sometimes billions into infrastructure and into software and platforms and servers and you name it. So they need to launch things. So the key is to quickly in the incubators, in the digital factories, to have go-to-market professionals, value experts that can actually quickly do analysis of of differentiation. And the problem is having that intimacy with both customer and competition. So without this, the analysis is going to be very light. But you have to get started. You have to get started. And there's enough published out there that you could find something that's going to be, as far as information is concerned, don't reinvent the wheel. Lots of companies, including all the big 6 consulting companies, have published about the value of IoT, predictive maintenance, and use these numbers. If you don't have other numbers, it's a credible enough reference that you could start going in with value numbers instead of going with cost approach. So it's doing your homework, understanding who does what, and what's talked about in terms of value in my specific end use.
Absolutely. And it looks like we actually did have one last one come in during that answer. And Stephan, you'll like this one. Actually, Stephan did a great webinar with us in August that's archived on our website in our resource center on quantifying the value of intangibles. So this will be a good piece for the person that asked this question to go reference. But the question is, how do we calculate intangible value?
Yeah, and you'll find that you versus Bosch Digital or versus BCG Digital, most of the differentiation might be intangibles. A lot of, we haven't talked about this, but one critical aspect in data offers is customer trust. Does the customer trust you with the management of data, the compliance of data, the cybersecurity, the way you're going to manage the relationship? How do you dollarize trust? Well, there is a way of doing that, and it can be done through surveys, interviews, and this is what you have to do, a lot more customer insight. So I highly recommend you watch that webinar, and I think Leverage Point does a good job at putting all these webinars on their website. It's on YouTube too, on their YouTube platform. And if you have further questions, you can email me. But there's techniques, and you have to do the effort again to go and quantify it, either through Net Promoter Score, customer satisfaction research, deep customer interviews, and extract the willingness to pay. There's lots of techniques and willingness to pay that you can use as well without spending, $1 million in doing so. But again, back to differentiation. If your differentiation is only intangible, then you have to find the value of these intangibles.
Yep. And I keep giving you a false last question, but we just had another one come in, so I will give it to you since we still have some more time. What challenges will we incur, or do you foresee us incurring while implementing a pricing strategy, a subscription or hybrid model?
So the biggest challenges will be internal, no doubt. And you guys all know that. Even to make a discount change in your traditional pricing strategy, it's a battle with the sales force, right? Now imagine you have an incubator that's working on a brand new disruptive digital offer with a subscription-based pricing model. The incubator is not going to manage the scaling, of these offers. It's going to be moved back into the core business. Now the core business is going to look at this and say, what the heck is this, And how do I sell it? Who's going to sell it? Same salespeople who sell boxes and equipment, or different salespeople? How do you train a salesperson to sell subscription-based, offers when they've sold equipment for 20 years, right? It's a traditional change management, thing that we talked about in value-based pricing many times. It's even worse in our digital world. So, and the scaling may be impacted, so your ability to scale very quickly, because when you move to a subscription-based model, you're moving to lots of different customers paying little amount of time, little amount of money. That means lots of customers. But who's going to sell to all these lots of customers, right? So that's a key question. And then you have to convince them, to sell at the price, the level that you set. And then all these different, implications behind it. How do you set up the incentives of the salespeople or the people selling this? How do you manage that in the software? So at the end of the day, it's going from cost plus to value-based pricing is already hard in a core business with things that you know very well. Imagine doing that in digital offers where you actually introduce new pricing model. So lots of mindset change, lots of change management internally before you go out and convince the customer. Now remember, the customer saw you for 20 years or 10 years or 5 years as a product seller. They expect you to sell them an equipment. Now you're going in and selling them outcome or cost reduction, and we're going to share profit, an outcome-based pricing model, or we're going to sell them a software and access to data. But the customers never used to see you like this. He said, well, what are you talking about? I usually buy equipment from you. So you're going to have to re-educate your customers as well on listening to your story and educate them to accept your pricing model. But typically you would do that as part of the framing and the incubating of your digital offer in the factory. So you have to prepare the re-entry in the core business. So I could talk forever on this, but as you can imagine, it's a lots of convincing, internal training, change management, championing of the, lots of work for sure.
Great, thank you so much. And that's all the questions we have. But before you guys go, just a reminder to register for next month's webinar. During the exit survey, you'll have the option to register, and we'll have Todd Snellgrove in, a founding partner at Experts in Value, and he'll be joining us to discuss profiting from demonstrating quantified value. Should be a great webinar on Thursday, April 19th. And that's it from us for today. Thank you so much for joining us, and a special thank you to Stephan for your insights And from all of us here at Leverage Point, we hope you have a wonderful rest of your week. Take care.